Right now, time for this man.
Doctor, give me the news.
On Breakfast with Vossy and Brandy, The Back Page with David Riccio.
Morning, David.
Hey, good morning, boys.
How are things? What do you think about Dylan Brown as a number 7?
Well, I think this is part of the layer upon layer of intrigue with this contract, and the 10 years is the mind-blowing part of it.
Extreme.
The $1.3 million part of it is extreme for a lot of fans and commentators.
Yep.
But then the other layer is that absolutely the Newcastle Knights want him as their number 7, and we just haven't seen it. So that's the other layer of the mind-blowing aspect of this huge gamble that the Knights are taking. How it goes, I mean, it's anyone's guess as far as how he transitions into a halfback, because we haven't seen it. We have not seen it.
No.
David, now the deal has been done, was there ever another mystery suitor for Dylan Brown?
Guys, I never believed there was, and I always said this is even okay. I've got another layer here. This is like a Big Mac burger. This one, it's just got layer upon layer. This is the thing. I always felt Newcastle were only bidding against Parramatta. Like there was only one buyer, which even makes the deal even more extraordinary. And in all of my inquiries around the game, and like the Warriors were a great example. This is. Dylan's obviously has heritage from New Zealand, was born there, and not even the Warriors were interested at any point. And then you start to go around the clubs as far as their appeal and interest levels are concerned, and it just wasn't there. Look, there was a whisper about St George Illawarra, and Saints couldn't be quick enough to shoot it down. So I was always of the opinion it was the Knights and Knights only, guys.
Wow. Yeah, I guess the fact that he was about to earn for the next 6 years at Parramatta was going to earn $1.1 million
a year.
A year. That's right, a year. I'd be still fascinated to learn just how that conversation of the 10-year and got to the figure that it did, how that played out. But I did read something that Brent I read part of Reedy's story out this morning. Where he obviously sat down with both Peter O'Sullivan and Adam O'Brien and got their views on what they sold to Dylan Brown and how they want him to play. If I was a Newcastle fan and I read that story, I'd go, okay, well, that gives me... I've got a little bit more confidence in what they're thinking they're going to do with him.
Yeah, no doubt. And speaking to Adam myself, like he's got absolute confidence that this is a combination that's going to gel, and there is so much belief and promise of brighter days ahead with Fletcher Sharp, guys. I think he's probably the unknown talent in this whole discussion. That there's so much belief from the Newcastle Knights that Fletcher Sharp will develop into a serious footballer. That suddenly you flip the mindset and perception that Dylan Brown's going to have to do everything in the halves for the Knights because of what they believe that Fletcher Sharp will become and such an attacking threat. So, internally that... they have to have confidence, right? They've gone deep.
You'd hope so. You'd hope so.
That's right.
That's right. Bevan French, another one of those. We get a message on the text line.
Which will lead me into a question to David momentarily, but I'm really keen to see how Fletcher Sharp and Newcastle play this week against the Dolphins on the back of the Dylan Brown news, and equally how Dylan plays against the Tigers on Sunday afternoon and how the crowd greets Dylan Brown as he runs onto the field, bearing in mind that most of the people in the crowd would do exactly the same thing Dylan has done for a big bump in their paycheck. But the conversation then goes on to, well, where now for Parramatta in terms of halves going forward? Can you tell me why a bloke who's played one game into a 5-year deal, having left Penrith to join the Tigers, is all of a sudden being linked to another club, one game into a 5-year deal? This is rugby league lunacy. David.
Matty, it's just rugby league. It's the situation. You're referring to Jerome Luai,
yes.
And the situation is that he does have clauses in his contract that allow some leverage to get out of that deal. I'm like you. Like, it's all very premature as far as any connection to Parramatta. with Jerome Luai, and to the point of which the discussions I had with the Eels yesterday is that they haven't moved. They haven't made any moves whatsoever. They're just going to sit for a bit and assess the market. There's certainly no stress or urgency to go to market. The catch to this is, and it will be for the same for the Newcastle Knights now for the next 10 years. Parramatta have let go of so many good young halves on the basis that Dylan Brown and Mitchell Moses were going to be their long-term halves. And I'm referring to Blaze Talangi, Ethan Sanders, and also Lachlan Galvin. So the Newcastle Knights will be in the same position where anyone below the starting halves next year of Brown and Sharp will become, I would argue disgruntled and want to forge their NRL career elsewhere. So these are the situations that Parramatta just need to sit back and wait. Clearly Jerome Luai's name's been tossed up. Luai Galvin's an interesting one, guys.
He is.
The Tigers have got a lot of work to do there to get him re-signed, as was the case last time round. Remembering the headlines that attracted Galvin all the way through to get that signature done again. Well, he only needs to go to November 1 this year, and he's on the open market to peruse his options again. So, and this is where I wrote a column on the weekend in relation to Benji Marshall. His influence on Galvin over the next 2 to 3 months will be paramount to him either staying or leaving at the club. And as I mentioned, Galvin, coming from the Parramatta nursery, would no doubt the Eels would have a look there if he goes to market on November 1.
What about the trio of Francis Molo, Michaeli Ravalawa, David Clemmer? What's happening? Will that all fall into place, do you think?
Yeah, I reckon as far as the domino effect here, Brandy, I reckon it hinges on Ravalawa. Now, Michaeli Ravalawa, the big St George Illawarra winger, he had a medical assessment at South Sydney yesterday. Now, so long as that South Sydney medical goes well, I expect Ravalawa to go to the Rabbitohs immediately. Now, what that will do will open up a spot in the Dragons roster and enable the arrival of David Clemmer on the proviso that the Tigers release him with the same negotiation fee of which both parties are happy. I expect that to happen. So. And then Molo's the other element in the room, and it's the Sydney Roosters. Just having a look at their situation in their forward stocks, and whether they can get Molo in cheap to replenish. Clearly, we know we've spoken. Well,
they'd have a bit of money left. There'd be a bit of cap space to get Molo in.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, there was a desire from the Dragons to try and get David Clemmer in for this weekend's match against South Sydney. I can tell you that that won't happen. It's just been left too late now. And if anything, we would see David Clemmer at Saints next week. They've got the bye next week, so it would give him a full week of training with Saints, and then be back for round 4 in the red and white.
Okay. Another text just came in too. What about Dally M winner from fullback to the Melbourne Storm to the halfback for Cronulla? Nico Hines.
Yep.
There's another player that's gone from fullback to halves and made it successful.
And I'll come back to one who is glaringly obvious, or should be, in a moment. But I don't want to get too far away from the player movement when it comes to a story you've reported that Jayden Brailey is a Raider now. David, can you help me understand why the Raiders need another dummy half option?
Yeah, look, it's as far as Tom Starling and Danny Levi are concerned, they're both off contract, guys. And at this point in time, they're not re-signed at the Raiders next year. So the Raiders clearly see what almost everyone sees in the game in relation to Jayden Brailey. Really good character, super experienced, great on and off the field, and basically someone to guide the hand of the exceptional Owen Paddy coming through the Raiders system over the next 2 years. It's a done deal, guys. 2-year deal for Jayden Brailey down at the Raiders. He'll move there next year. The next question is, and it hasn't been forthcoming at this point, but is whether he goes early. To your point, Matty, with Danny Levi Starling there, that would seem unlikely at this point in time. But the Raiders clearly making a change up there in the dummy half situation, and still with some work to do on whether they retain one of either Levi or Starling.
Oh, you wouldn't think so. I like on that news, you'd be going, well, Tom Starling and Danny Levi would be looking for new clubs.
Well, just to wrap it up, in this chat regarding Dylan Brown and the Newcastle scrum base moving forward, Graham from Narrabeen asks, do you think Adam O'Brien is capable of turning Brown into a halfback, considering his inability to stick with a halves combination? Well, as you've said, Brandy, you think that Dylan Brown can become. You're backing him to become a halfback. And before people line up to criticise you, here is the most obvious fullback to halves move, that's something that Fletcher Sharp is looking to do. A former fullback into 5'8" and seemed to have good things ahead of him. Morning, boys. Don't forget the great man beside you played fullback and halfback, so I think people should listen to what he's saying. Cheers, the big G. Of course, David. Greg Alexander.
The great man.
More half to fullback and then fullback back to half. But yeah, Big G, I'm with you. I'm backing you.
Anything else for us
Anthony
this morning,
Milford,
David?
guys?
Yeah.
The MILF.
Milford.
Yeah, the MILF.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Team List Tuesday threw up a big few stories, didn't it? With Nene getting dropped to Queensland Cup with a host of debutantes, Bailey Bentley Harpy, Matty Nicholson, Jordan Samrani, Brock Gray. Did you have a standout story, Teams Tuesday, David?
Oh, look, it's really tough times for Parramatta because they come up against a West Tigers team, and we know how tight these tussles have been over the past couple of years. The Tigers get back Appy Coruscant and Jareen Buller.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
And don't underestimate Stafford Toa either. Stafford Toa back in makes them much stronger. Yes, agree.
Yeah. So and to the point of which bookmakers have got the Tigers favourites in this match. Now, that's not a statement you've been able to say too often over the past few seasons. The Tigers favourites to beat Parramatta this weekend. On the basis of that, that's a pretty good-looking roster now, lineup now for the Tigers. And on the flip side, on the back of what has happened to Mitchell Moses, the Eels are favourites for the wooden spoon with bookies. So it could be another tough weekend for Jason Riles. But I just thought the inclusion of Coruscant and Jareen Buller suddenly, and as to your point, Brandy Stafford, so it makes the Tigers look a lot stronger.
Great point, David. Tigers, Eels, Sunday afternoon, CommBank Stadium. David, you have a great day.
Hey, thank you, boys. Go well.